This podcast is brought to you by Proton Dealership IT, experts in dealership cybersecurity and IT management. Interested in a free cybersecurity, compliance, or IT consultation? Visit protontex.com. That's PROTONTECHS.com.
Welcome to Daily Drive for Tuesday, November 18th, 2025. I'm Kellen Walker in Las Vegas. Today on the show, Toyota will spend almost $1 billion to boost hybrid production across the U.S. Bosch still struggles with production snags despite hopes of chip supply relief. And Audi plans to build a Land Rover Defender rival in the U.S. Plus, former Ford Mexico CEO Kathleen Ligocki reflects on Mary Barra's rise at GM and what it meant for women in the industry.
My generation looked up, we couldn't see the sky. But now women can look up and see that you could be at the top of a big company. As a matter of fact, anybody could be at the top of a big company.
Let's run through all the news you need to know to keep up in the auto industry. Toyota is making a big commitment to hybrid production in the U.S. The automaker will spend $912 million across 5 plants to boost production of hybrid engines and components. The factories are in West Virginia, Kentucky, Mississippi, Tennessee, and Missouri. The plan is part of Toyota's announced $10 billion in additional U.S. investments in mobility through the end of the decade. The biggest investment goes to West Virginia for more hybrid engines and transaxles, while Mississippi will start building hybrid Corollas instead of importing them. Hybrids and plug-in hybrids have been a bright spot for Toyota and Lexus. They now make up nearly half of the automaker's U.S. sales. More on this story in a minute with our own Larry Velliquette. While Toyota ramps up U.S. hybrid production, Audi is taking its own steps to get closer to American customers. The automaker plans to develop a large electric SUV with a range extender specifically for American buyers, and it will be built in the U.S. on Scout's new body-on-frame platform in South Carolina. Sources tell our sibling publication, Automobile Voca, that Audi has shelved the idea of building its own U.S. plant. Instead, it will lean on Scout's facility to avoid massive investment costs and U.S. import tariffs. The move comes as Audi's U.S. sales slip, down 8% this year, and tariffs weigh heavily on the brand's bottom line. Scout's factory is expected to start production in late 2027. And Bosch says it's still feeling the effects of the Nexperia chip crisis at 3 of its plants. A spokesperson told Reuters that sites in Germany and Portugal remain disrupted after China curbed exports of Nexperia parts. The supply crunch has forced Bosch to send workers home, with hundreds now on furloughs across the affected plants. Bosch says it's watching trade talks closely as Dutch officials travel to Beijing this week to try to ease the standoff. And those are today's headlines. You can find more details on all those stories at autonews.com. Joining me now to talk more about Toyota's investment in U.S. hybrid production is Larry Velliquette, who covers the automaker for us at Automotive News. Larry Legend, welcome back to Daily Drive.
Cal, it's so good to be here with you during the week. I feel like I miss you.
All right, Larry. So what's driving this effort to lean into hybrid production in the U.S.?
This is really the first tranche of the $10 billion that Toyota is committed to investing in the U.S. We're talking about $912 million, going to be spread across 5 plants to boost hybrid production because, frankly, Toyota cannot keep up with demand right now for its hybrids and its plug-in hybrids. They are extremely popular because they're interim steps, right? This was the strategy that Toyota laid out and has kept on for the last 10 years, much to the consternation of a lot of folks on the environmental side who wanted everybody to go EV. They're leaning into their strategy, they're expanding production, and their strategy is working in the market.
And how does building hybrid Corollas in Mississippi instead of importing them change Toyota's competitive position under tariffs and trade rules?
Well, it makes them cheaper, theoretically, right? It certainly makes them cheaper to build. If you can make those Corolla hybrids, which I don't know if have you driven the new Camry yet?
I have not.
Kel? Okay, so Camry, this is going to have the same powertrain as the Camry, right? And if you look at the new one that we saw in Tokyo, it's not that much smaller than the Camry, but the all hybrid Camry powertrain, over 50 miles a gallon, right? That's Prius numbers, and a really remarkable sedan, right? That is now cheap in the marketplace because of where it's positioned against the crossovers and SUVs. It's a very popular package, Camry. Now you're talking about bringing those Corollas in, the hybrid Corollas, and probably doing the same thing, where they'll just probably switch to an all hybrid powertrain with the next iteration. That just as they've done with Camry and now with RAV, that I would imagine they'll do that with Camry, because if you get a fuel benefit when you spread it across that many vehicles, you get a nice cost benefit. It's a winning combination.
Good stuff. Larry Velaquette, thank you so much for joining me, sir.
Cal, always great to be here.
Coming up, former Ford Mexico CEO Kathleen Ligocki joins the show to talk about women in leadership in the auto industry and what the rise of Mary Barra at GM meant for her and her colleagues. That's next on Daily Drive.
While you provide top-notch support to your team and customers every day, is anyone taking the time to ensure your sensitive data remains secure? Just one click on a malicious link can place your entire dealership in danger. In fact, the average cost of a data breach surpassed $4 million last year. Stay one step ahead by understanding the threats and minimizing your risk. Proton Dealership IT works around the clock to provide you support 24/7, 365. Operating out of a cutting-edge security operations center located in the USA, Proton continuously monitors, detects, and responds to your potential network issues or cyber threats. You've got a lot on your plate. Keep your focus on where it matters most, your customers. Learn more about our comprehensive services at protontex.com. That's PROTONTECHS.com.
Welcome back to Daily Drive. I'm Kellen Walker. As part of our 100th anniversary at Automotive News, we're running essays from industry experts and insiders about some of the biggest developments and through lines from the past 100 years. Kathleen Ligocki was the highest-ranking female executive in the global auto industry during the late 90s and early 2000s. Among the positions she held were CEO of Ford Mexico, Marketing Vice President for Ford North America, and Ford Global Vice President of Customer Service. She was also CEO of Tower Automotive. Her success helped pave the way for the ascension of Mary Barra in 2014 as the first female CEO of a major automaker. On Wednesday, she will have an essay on autonews.com about Barra's rise at General Motors. She spoke with our own Hannah Lutz all about it. Here's a piece of their conversation.
Our guest today was the highest-ranking female executive in the global auto industry during the late 1990s and early 2000s. Kathleen Ligocki was CEO of Ford Mexico, Marketing Vice President for Ford North America, and Ford Global Vice President of Customer Service. She was also CEO of Tower Automotive. Her success helped pave the way for the ascension of Mary Barra in 2014 as the first female CEO of a major automaker. Hi, Kathleen. Thanks for joining me.
Hi, Hannah. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you.
I listened to that introduction. It makes me feel old.
Well, it should make you feel accomplished. So give me some background. When did you start working in the auto industry and what were you doing?
So I started at GM in 1979. So this was a long, long time ago. I was a factory foreman in Kokomo, Indiana at Delco Electronics. And this was before there were supervisors or team leaders or any of the more appropriate kind of names. We were foremen at the time. And I was assigned to a really tough plant in Kokomo on second shift, foreman. And I have to say, it's where I fell in love with the car industry. I absolutely loved manufacturing.
Yes, and you stuck with the industry. What were the opportunities for women at that time?
You know, Hannah, when you look back, if you looked at the very top of GM, the first woman, Catherine Cleary, had been named to the board in the early 70s. And Betsy Anker Johnson had been named as a VP in 79 of environmental activities. But when you looked around my world, which is where most of the women were, None of the heads of divisions were women. None of the VPs were women. In our division, none of the directors were women. There were a few managers in staff areas, but you were lucky to get your foot in the door, right? I mean, it was common to be in a meeting with 50 people and be the only woman, because heaven help that they would assign us close to each other, right? We were strewn around kind of. So we really, I mean, when we looked up, we maybe aspired to be managers and directors, but we didn't envision a future like exists today where a woman could become a CEO of a major car company.
At the time, I mean, you mentioned that there were not many women and you were kind of scattered around the company. Were there any ways for you to come together and connect and form some sort of community?
Nothing formal. And so we did get to know each other with individuals because there weren't very many of us. So we'd reach out and have coffee or get together after work, but everything was informal. As a matter of fact, honestly, for the first, I'm going to say 15 years I was in the business, there was nothing formal like the employee resource groups that exist today, which is wonderful for so many. I think it really helps keep talent together and gives the company sounding boards for all of these different perspectives. But no, at the time, everything was informal. So we basically drank in bars.
Can really connect that way.
Not that that's a bad thing, but that's what we did.
So, years later, Mary Barra took the helm at General Motors. That was in 2014. What was the reaction of the industry and in particular of women in the industry?
We start with women. We were like, finally, yay. We were, maybe those of us who came ahead of Mary even felt a little responsible. We were so proud of her. I mean, the idea that she could break such an important barrier for so many in a tough industry, right? Auto's not easy for anybody to make it to the top. It was just, we were so excited. But you know what? This was a bigger milestone than just for women. I mean, if you go back at the time, Mary was the 5th CEO in 5 years, and she was an insider after outsider. She was an engineer after years of finance people. And she not only was an engineer, she grew up in the plant, she ran supply chain, she'd run global engineering, she'd had a stint in HR during the bankruptcy. So she touched a lot of parts of core line functions in the company, not just staff areas, which is often where women would rise to the top, but then not the very top, right? They'd stay because they didn't have the line experience that was needed. And so she competed against some other insiders who were pretty capable, and the board chose Mary. I'm sure the skeptics were wondering how long she would last, given that the half-life of any automotive CEO is measured in nanoseconds some days. But boy, if you'd bet against Mary, would you have been wrong? It turns out she was exactly what GM needed because she had the knowledge of an insider. But maybe because women are never fully insiders, she had the commitment. She could see what was wrong at GM. She knew the company had to change. So she had to stabilize leadership and she had to transform the company. And she had the benefit of her experience at GM to hit the ground running, but also the perspective to come from a different place than maybe a traditional leader would have come.
Yeah, you mentioned many of the previous leaders before her had finance backgrounds. She's an engineer, and she also did a stint in human resources. How do you think that kind of shaped her career? How do you think that trajectory shaped her leadership?
So I think it prepared her to be a CEO. I mean, if you were to ask what an ideal prep for any industrial CEO, coming up through major line functions and running major parts of the organization is critical. And sometimes that's a P&L, and sometimes in automakers, that's major line functions. Now, I think her stint in HR was an interesting one because it was during GM's bankruptcy. So she had a direct relationship with a series of very tough external constituencies during that process, but also with the board of directors. And I think that gave her exposure in a different way to the board that gave her a leg up when they were considering CEO candidates.
And how has Mary Barra continued to be a trailblazer since she took the helm?
Wow. Well, of course, she's had over a decade. So she's been a CEO longer than 75% of her fellow S&P 500 CEOs. And so it's an amazing track record. But she really tackled some of the major issues. One of the problems with an insider CEO, right, always, is do they own so much of the past that they can't transform, right? That's always the question boards ask, actually. And that's why sometimes they bring in an external person if they want something transformed. But then the person has a learning curve. But Mary tackled the toughest issues. She tackled GM's kind of sprawling portfolio. She exited, unprofitable businesses, geographies. I mean, Opel and Vauxhall and Australia, New Zealand and Russia and India. And she looked at brands. I mean, she wasn't even afraid of trying new things and like some of the mobility services. And then if they didn't meet their plan, like Maven and Cruise Robotaxi, not afraid to say, you know what, we're going to reorient there too. And she used that, more importantly, she used those resources and that focus to really steer GM toward the future of what the company could be, investing in future technologies, investing in EV, investing in autonomous. I mean, you look at where GM is today, it's the broadest EV lineup in North America. Plans to invest $1 billion in graphite and lithium, vertically integrating into those critical materials in the supply chain, forged an alliance with LG Chem, right, for cathodes, hired top talent in batteries to drive down the cost, which is one of the major issues without subsidies. How can EVs be more affordable? And then introducing the next gen eyes off. Watch Cadillac. They've always introduced new technology in Cadillac, and the Cadillac Escalade that's coming in 2028 is going to have their next gen eyes off technology. And so this is just the beginning. This is just what they've announced. There's more cool stuff to come. So it's wonderful. I think that what happens to so many automakers is they spread themselves so thin. And this is why some of the startups have been able to make inroads, is that they really have been focused in terms of really gaining traction. And GM has been able to both keep the breadth that they need, right? I mean, they still are big in the Americas. China's a little more of a challenge, but still important in China. But the technology leadership that GM has in some of these important new technologies is really critical for the company's future. And Mary has been unafraid to try things and invest in these new areas.
It was a big deal for women in the industry in 2014, but now more than a decade later, how has she motivated women in the auto industry and even beyond?
So, when you look at Mary, Mary's more than just a top female CEO. She makes all the top leader lists, right, of industries. And she's one of the people, like if you're president, I don't care which party you are, she's one of the CEOs you call. She's one of the most influential CEOs on the planet because she runs one of the most important companies on the planet. And she's proven herself over a decade to have been able to navigate. I mean, everyone knows this is a hard industry. This isn't for folks who like an easy path. And she's been able to steer the company through all this. And so she's at the top of her game in all of those things. She's built a very diverse board. She's the chair of that board. She's guiding the governance, piece of it as well. And so I look at what she's been able to do, not just as a female CEO, which is wonderful, but as a CEO of a major company in this world. And she is having impact across such a broad platform.
Yeah, that impact is really broad, as you said, and really clear. Is there one way in particular that she has inspired you, especially?
It's interesting. In the first case, when somebody breaks through such an important, glass ceiling, it's an inspiration for so many because it changes for several generations of women the definition of what is possible. So my generation looked up, we couldn't see the sky, but now women can look up and see that you could be at the top of a big company. As a matter of fact, anybody could be at the top of a big company. I hope that's what people take away, is that it's talent and drive and capability and opportunity that gets you there. And so as a woman of the car, in the car business for over 40 years, being a small part of that legacy is makes me feel really proud. But the other thing I have to say is, for all of us, what inspires me is Mary continues to have impact. And I think for all of us, even though I'm post my CEO career, but I serve on boards, I watch what leaders like Mary are doing to leave a legacy, whether you have a broad global platform like someone like Mary does, or any of us in your audience, look around. We can all have impact on helping other people reach their potential, reach for the stars, become who they really could be. And that's what inspires me still. It's one of the reasons I stayed in the car business. I like cars. But I stayed in the business for the people in the car industry. And I love the fact that it's rough and tumble. I love the fact that you have to be a little bit crazy to be in it. But I also love the fact that it has impact on consumers' lives, on their personal identities, on the economies, on the jobs that it spins off. I mean, on so many different things. And so when I look at someone like Mary continuing to have impact at her level, it inspires me to continue to have impact at mine.
Well, great. Thank you so much, Kathleen, for talking about Mary with us and for writing the essay in our centennial book. We really appreciate your time.
My pleasure, Hannah. Thanks a lot. And good luck, Mary. We're all still watching and cheering for you.
You can read Kathleen Ligocki's essay as part of our centennial anniversary at Automotive News on Wednesday on autonews.com. It will also appear in our Automotive News Centennial Coffee Table book, which you can pre-order now until November 21st. The book will ship in late December. Copies are limited. That's Daily Drive for today. I'm Kellen Walker. Thanks to Automotive News executive producer Jake Neer, as well as our own Larry Velaquette for his reporting for today's podcast. We also had reporting from Burkhard Rearing of our sibling publication, Automobile Voca. You can get the latest news on manufacturing investments, supply chains, and everything happening in the auto industry at autonews.com. Come back tomorrow for a conversation with Stefano Marzani of Amazon Web Services about connected vehicles, their dependence on cell phone service, and what happens when they drive into cellular dead zones.
Think about an assistant that was going to tell you, hey, I know that tomorrow you got to go there. And there may be some blind spot areas for cellular connectivity. So why don't we prepare some of the content you may enjoy for that trip?
We'd love to hear from you. Let us know what you think of the show and the topics we covered today. Send us an email at dailydrive@autonews.com or leave us a voicemail at 313-444-2774. And if you enjoy the podcast, remember to like, leave a review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.